We did start a bit late, but we still have some time for some discussion now, and I'm sure there are lots of points and questions and comments that everyone would like to take. We have got the roving microphones, I think, and would anyone like to contribute?
I'm a retired paediatrician. My name is Sonia Baxi. I've been in Medact since 1992 and joined because of the nuclear weapon issue. And I want to thank Andy in particular for the linkage of the various topics together. And again, David, for campaigning that. Now, I come from a small town in Sussex, and we have small groups and meetings all the time on all these separate issues. You can have a meeting about the people in Guantanamo Bay. You can have a meeting about war on want. There's a lecture next week from WaterAid. And what I'm seeing is that people do care, but campaign issues are fragmented because people can't comprehend the interlinkage that has been displayed this morning. And the reason we can't comprehend that is because of the power of the economies, which again, Andy, you showed, with all the power being linked in such a small financial vested interest globally. And that's really what we're up against. So the comment I want to make is, I think Medact needs to look very carefully at the issues David raised about people who do care, do things, but on fragmented agendas, because in this country, we do not have a political party organisation that links all these issues together. And most health workers, and I'm just fresh from a commissioners' meeting, most health workers are fighting like mad to keep the contracts within the NHS and not going out to the private sector. So there are far too many things disturbing our focus of attention, and one needs to be aware of this in launching a new campaign. Thank you.
Sorry, my name's Joe. I'm a junior doctor from Liverpool. Just want to say thanks for two amazing talks. I mean, I think it's interesting that in society at the moment, we have so much advertising pushed at us on this neoliberal agenda of, individualism and everything for oneself. I think it's quite hard as an organisation as this to actually push against that tide when everything's demanding the latest iPhone, iPad, the equivalent. But I don't know if we can sort of work together with organisations like 38 Degrees, which have really done very well to actually mobilise across a whole range of society. And be really interested if Medact could kind of, that sort of breadth of message that you have, also to work with 38 Degrees, which kind of work very much on individual issues, but have really branched out to attract a wide range of society.
Hazel Inskip, medical researcher. I think one of the most important comments that Dave made was about having hope and courage. Because one of the challenges I think we face is the apathy. And if Medact can give a message of why we need to do this because it's actually worth doing, we can all have hope. And garnishing all the organisations that actually can believe that there is hope will make it actually happen. But the media is actually just saying don't bother, and picking up on the previous point, just live our lifestyle just as we are and carry on as normal, expanding our growth because that's what we all want.
I just want to pick up on the issue of hope. I think hope is important, but I think it's also important to contrast hope with false optimism. And I think, we've seen tremendous health improvements across the world, and we've seen a 5-fold increase in global health spending, reductions in child mortality, increases in life expectancy. But I think we have to be really wary of this representing a source of false optimism, because the kinds of threats that climate change pose and the kinds of threats that growing militarization and the likely increase in the frequency of war, violence and conflict, I think mean that the gains that we've seen over the last 20 years or so are very fragile and are likely to be reversed.
Medact will be what the people in this room or the people in the overflow room want it to be. So I think there's going to be enormous potential for people to get engaged, to undertake activities that they feel are important. But what's crucial, I think, is to maintain a kind of coherent overall analysis so that the whole thing makes sense, so that what we don't do is internally contradictory. And I think that's what people are looking for, and that's why people are lost, because it's a big picture, they can't quite see the way through. There are many different trends, we're dealing with complex systems. And so what we need to do is to have a very clear analysis which puts health at the heart of policy. And for far too long, the objective of policy in most countries has just been economic growth for its own sake, really, without analysing what the benefits for humanity or disbenefits might be. And we need to replace that paradigm with another paradigm which puts humanity much more at the centre of development, whether it be in the UK or globally. I think we also need to make sure that people believe that they can do something, because they can. And local activity is important too. So, campaigning, whether it be for your local NHS, not to be privatised, but also, getting bicycle lanes, working in your local community can be an important contribution to the bigger debate. It will help to engage a wider public. It will help them to see where their local activity can fit into the bigger picture about promoting health and enhancing sustainability. So I do think if we can engage both locally and nationally and globally, that will be important. We also, as people have pointed out, need to engage, I think, with natural allies. And public health, of course, is by its very nature an interdisciplinary activity. Increasingly, we're looking to political scientists, to economists, to psychologists, as well as the traditional public health disciplines of epidemiology, biostatistics, and so on. And I think it's important to maintain this kind of holistic perspective. So to engage economists, political scientists, human rights lawyers, and so on in the work of Medact is going to be important for getting a multiplier effect, for enhancing our impact. I think it'll also be important to have political engagement, not in a party political way necessarily, but there are people across a range of different political parties, I think, who are disturbed about the way in which things are going, and who likewise are looking for ways of moving forward in a coherent way. So I think if we can provide a powerful analysis with clear policy goals, with clear steps along the way to a much more sustainable, more healthy future, then we can, at least in potentially, we can promote a sort of sea change in the political landscape, which I think is sorely needed, because politics is far too restricted at the moment. Party politics really restricts us to a very limited and partial view of the world and of the future.
In some way, we have to be able to change the disempowerment of the average citizen in the world today. And he can see that a lot of changes in the world that are happening for the worse. And he feels disempowered. No matter what he does and says, nothing seems to change. Perhaps one of the great things we have to do is to change the way we think about so many things. Not only about the economy and politics, but also the way we resolve conflict. We need to demilitarize diplomacy. We need to change what's happening in the United Nations. But to do this, I think we have to empower the average citizen in your own country, in your own town.
Hello, I am a natural sciences student at UCL. I'm involved in a couple of campaigns similar to Medact, but for students, so medicine and universities allied for essential medicines. And I know we've touched on the point of hope and imagination and the importance of that, but I just wanted to add that it's very refreshing from a young person's perspective to hear academics talk in that way. And I think there's a point that needs to be made about not being condescending towards young people that are trying to get involved in these campaigns, and the amount of times that I'm told by people older and more educated than myself that my view is based on youthful idealism is demoralising, and I think it puts a lot of young people off getting involved, and I think that's a key point for future engagement of youth.
Do you think Medact and information from it via it has any role in our current medical curricula in medical schools? Because we have a lot of crap filling up the curriculum. My personal bugbear is, I have to say, too much on ethics, which wasn't invented when I was a student at all. But I think we could taper that somewhat with the more global stuff. I mean, having been in charge in part of curriculum in Guy's and St Thomas's, the issues we're talking about today do not feature. And I really think they should, in some form. Thank you.
First of all, from the colleague who talked from the student perspective, I mean, I suppose my retort to the person who accused you of youthful idealism would be to accuse them of senile defeatism. I mean, I do think it's not idealistic. You know, it's absolutely essential that we do tackle some of these issues. And if anything, it's them who are being unrealistic by refusing to actually look at the data that we have. And this is data-driven. I mean, we're scientists, you know, and we've got to look at the data. And if you look at the data, then the patterns are pretty clear. And I think that's what you need to confront people with and say, okay, here's the data, now what are your comments? And if they can't comment on it, then, you know, clearly they're not competent. So I would, you know, basically respond with data and try to engage them on that basis. I think this whole use of evidence is really, really important, and that's one of the things that the health community has, I think, brought to the broader scientific community. It's quite striking when I talk to scientists from other disciplines that the whole idea of, for example, systematic reviewing and trying to get an unbiased view of the evidence is something which has been quite influential. I mean, you can't necessarily apply, say, the randomized trial to everything, of course. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that the rigor of looking at evidence, trying to look at all of the evidence and coming to a balanced conclusion is a very important discipline, and it's one which is affecting the broader scientific community. And it is also politically very powerful because it's very difficult to argue against good quality evidence if you confront someone with it. So I'm all in favour of that, and I think we should work with, or Medact should work with organisations like Evidence for Development. Also agree very strongly that there's a very important role for ensuring that some of these issues are dealt with in a very professional way in the curriculum. And we don't have enough people in the UK who are teaching at the undergraduate and postgraduate level who really looked at the data and who can teach on it in a way which is kind of reflective and self-critical and so on. Medact does have a history, in fact, of developing curriculum materials in the past. Some of the original global health materials were developed through Medact. So I would like to see, I mean, one possibility is you actually get a curriculum working group which actually does develop professional materials for curriculum. And I imagine that a lot of medical educators and health educators from other professions would be delighted to get those teaching materials and would probably use them very widely. So I think it's a real opportunity for Medact.
It is amazing what is not taught in universities and schools for that matter. So that is an important issue that we do need to tackle. On the issue of senile defeatism, I'd agree with that. But that cynicism, I think, also reflects this lack of imagination, this lack of belief that there is an alternative. So that's why I was wanting to emphasize the need for imagination, the need to be able to unlock the way in which we feel that we're stuck and we're constrained into a single way of living, that there is choice, that there are alternatives. And we as a community, I think, are really well placed to provide that imagination and that thinking.